Good morning, children. Now we move on to the third term. Those grammar, just go through it. Again, for the annual examination, we have only the third term portions. So we are starting the chapter 9, first chapter in third term. Now the open window. All of you all know what is a window, isn't it? We have very big windows, 3 or 4 section windows, or even one long window we'll be having in our homes. Now look at the get set shown there. 3 pictures are shown there. Now storytelling is one of the oldest art forms and it is considered a special skill even today. Match these pictures with the forms of storytelling. Share what you know about them in class. So you can see 3 pictures there. One is Dastangoi, the next one is Yakshagana, and the other one is Autumn Thullal. Now Autumn Thullal and Yakshagana you must be familiar, isn't it? You must have come across it in the lower classes or in the big classes when you have studied in the social studies, isn't it? Now, the first one is Autumn Thullal. The first picture shows Autumn Thullal. What is it? It is a poetic dance form of Kerala, isn't it? It was introduced by the poet, the famous poet Kunjan Nambyar. So they tell the story in the poetry form. Now the second picture you can see it is Dastangoi, that is it is a dance drama of South India, especially in the state of Karnataka. Yes, they mostly say the stories of Ramayana, Mahabharata, etc. in the dance drama form. And the third one is Yakshagana. Sorry, Dastangoi is the Urdu oral storytelling art form. Yes, Yakshagana is the dance drama of South India, mostly in Karnataka state. And in Yakshagana, the actor, he tells about the stories of Ramayana or Mahabharata. Now what makes a story believable? Why do we get engrossed in tales that may seem unlikely or involve strange creatures? Now people often retreat to the countryside to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. Frampton Nuttall had similar reasons for moving to a village, the hope for rest and quiet. Unfortunately for him, he discovers that people find ways to look for excitement even in quiet places. Read on to find out what happens when he meets an imaginative young girl there. So in this, the author, name is Frampton Nuttall. He is moving to the village side, to the countryside. He wants to take rest. He has undergone an operation and he wants to take rest in the countryside, away from the bustle and hustle of the city life. Now, section 1. My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall, said a very self-possessed young lady of 15. In the meantime, you must try and put up with me. Self-possessed means very confident, very brave young girl who's looking very calm also. In the picture, you can see the young girl there, and she knows how to talk even to strangers. So this man had come looking for an old lady called Mrs. Sapleton. His sister had given him the address of 4 or 5 families and he said, you go and visit them in the countryside, in the village. You will be all alone. You will be sitting and looking worried about your sickness. Don't worry about that. You go and meet these persons so that you can talk to them. You can visit their house. They will come to visit you and you will be enjoying your village life. So this young girl came out and told him, my aunt will come just now. In the meantime, I will make company with you. You can sit and talk to me. We can talk to each other till my aunt comes. Frampton Nuttall endeavored to correct something which should duly flatter the needs of the moment without unduly discounting the aunt that was to come. So Frampton Nuttall, he was trying hard to say something correct to this young girl. To praise the girl or to say something he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to say. Till his aunt came, both of them were quiet. Privately, he doubted more than ever whether these formal visits on a succession of total strangers would do much towards helping the nerve cure which he was supposed to be undergoing. He was undergoing a nerve cure, and he was a one who did not talk much, especially to strangers, and he didn't know what to talk to them, what to tell them. He had come to this house because his sister had given him the address to come and meet this lady there. I know how it will be, his sister had said when he was preparing to migrate to this rural retreat. You will bury yourself down there and not speak to a living soul, and your nerves will be worse than ever from moping. So her sister told him, if you go to the countryside, he was always living in the city. You know, city life and village life is extremely different, isn't it? In the city life, we can hear the noise, the busyness, all the traffics, the vehicles, but in the village area, it is very quiet, isn't it? So he came there to enjoy the quietness of the village side. But his sister had given him some address of some people, and she said, you must go and meet them, you must go and be friends with them, otherwise you will be sitting and thinking about your sickness. You will look sad. I shall give you letters of introduction to all the people I know there. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice. So she got these people's address because she lived there 4 or 5 years back. Frampton wondered whether Mrs. Sappleton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters of introduction, came into this nice division. So Frampton was wondering, he was thinking whether this lady, Mrs. Sappleton, was a friendly lady, just as his sister had told him. Do you know many of the people round here? Asked the niece when she judged that they had had sufficient silent communion. Sufficient silent communion means communication without word. They were sitting quietly. Both of them had nothing to say. He was not asking anything, and so suddenly she asked him, do you know many people in this village? So what did he reply? Hardly a soul, said Frampton. My sister was staying here, you know, for some 4 years ago, and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people here. So he said, my sister stayed in this village for 4 years back, and she has given me some letters of introduction to go and meet some people. He made the last statement in a tone of distinct regret. So he said the last statement very sadly. He did not know what kind of people they were. Then you know practically nothing about my aunt, pursued the self-possessed young lady. So this young lady is asking, so you don't know anything at all about my aunt, what had happened to her? Nothing. Only her name and address, admitted the caller. So he said, I know only her name and her address. So he was wondering whether Mrs. Sappleton was in the married or the widowed state. So he was thinking whether this lady was having a family, or whether she was married, or whether she was widowed. Her husband had died. He didn't know about her at all. An undefinable something about the room seemed to suggest masculine habitation. That is, the room was not at all feminine. It looked as though only men folk lived in that house. Her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago, said the child. That would be since your sister's time. So this girl said that a big tragedy, a very dangerous loss had happened in her family 3 years back. And what was that? Her tragedy? Asked Frampton. Somehow in this restful country, spot tragedy seemed out of place. So he did not think that in this quiet area, in this quiet village area, that tragedies like this could happen. Something sorrowful can happen. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon, said the niece, indicating a large French window that opened onto a lawn. Lawn is a grassy area. In front of the house, they had a grassy plot, and they kept a big window. The French windows, they are very big windows, the people could walk through it. So that window was always kept open. It is quite warm for the time of the year, said Frampton, but has that window got anything to do with the tragedy? So he is asking this girl, has that window which is kept open always got anything, or is that window related to the tragedy which happened in Mrs. Sappleton's life? Out through that window, 3 years ago to a day, her husband and her 2 young brothers went off for their day's shooting. They never came back. So that was the tragedy that happened. Her husband and her 2 young brothers had gone off hunting. In crossing the moor to their favorite snipe shooting ground, they were all 3 engulfed in a treacherous piece of bog. Moor means it is an open waste ground. So when they were crossing that open waste ground to go to their shooting ground, snipe shooting, snipe is a type of bird with a long neck, you can see in the picture shown there, and bog is the soft wet ground, a marshy place it was. So you get directly soaked under the water there. It engulfed those 3 people. It had been that dreadful wet summer, you know, and places that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. So they got engulfed, or they were swallowed in the very, very dangerous piece of bog. Bog is the soft wet ground. Yes, all 3 of them were engulfed in it, were swallowed by the marshy place. And even they did not even get their bodies back. So that was the most dreadful part of it, most terrifying part of it, most frightening part, that their bodies were not got back. Here the child's voice lost its self-possessed note and became falteringly human. Falteringly human means unsure and overcome with emotions. Now she was feeling very, very sad because her her 3 uncles were lost in that dangerous place. Poor aunt always thinks that they will come back someday, they and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them, and walk in at that window just as they used to. So her aunt is thinking that any day, some day or other, these 3 people, her husband and the 2 brothers, will come back with their dog. The brown spaniel is their little dog. And that is why the window is kept open every evening till it is quite dark. So poor dear aunt, she has often told me how they went out. Her husband with his white waterproof coat over his arm, and Ronnie, her youngest brother, singing, "Bertie, why do you bound? Why are you jumping?" as he always did to tease her because she got it on her nerves. Do you know, sometimes on still quiet evenings like this, I almost get a creepy feeling that they will all walk in through that window. She broke off with a little shudder. It was a relief to Frampton when the aunt bustled into the room with a whirl of apologies for being late in making her appearance. So this girl and her aunt thinks that those 3 men will come back sometime or the other through the open window, just as they went out through the same window. And this girl was feeling a little bit frightened. So we end the section 1, children. Read it. We'll continue in the next class. Thank you.